You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, it continues. It is time for Tony to take his victory lap. We were making predictions. I was like, all right, I think we're going to lose game 5, win game 6, lose game 7. I had said there's no way we could win a game in MSG, and there's no way to win a game 7. But Tony, he sent me the video earlier today. He called it on this very podcast where he said, I mean, he also said we're going to win game 5 and game 6, but who cares about that, man? We're in the fucking Eastern Conference Finals. Let's go, Tony.
Let's go. What a ride, right? The Pacers have never not making the Eastern Conference Finals since this podcast started. I'm just saying.
Right. No, it's true.
I saying.
We've never had to deal with a lost series in this podcast history. It's been fantastic.
Which is very uncommon for the Back Home Network.
Yes.
to have success.
Yeah, I mean, I think we started Crimson Cast right in the middle of the year before Tom Crean or right around there. And I think Assembly Call started. They had better luck. I think it started right before the Kentucky win.
Yep.
Yeah, Back Home Network has not had great success. Real quick plug, we are part of the Back Home Network. Check out Home Field Apparel, great t-shirts. Home23 is your code. Get 50% off first purchase. All right. I don't even know where to start, man. That was quite a game. You had it on Twitter. The national narrative didn't quite go this way, but I thought it was going to be like, all right, man, well, Brunson got hurt. So, that was the final straw. It's like, we were up 20 when Brunson got hurt. Just FYI.
Yeah, I was like, going to go ahead and bookmark this so this doesn't get lost in all of this. And, obviously the Knicks were decimated by injuries throughout the series, but like we've said it time and again on this podcast, like that is the MO for Tom Thibodeau teams. Like, yeah, he runs these dudes into the ground, they play heavy minutes and they get fatigued and they wear down, and that's part of the game. Like, the Pacers are dealing without Mathurin, and that Halliburton's been injured for a big part of the season, and like it's just part of the game, and it sucks. And like I don't really have sympathy for Knicks fans because they piss me off, but it's just part of the game. And like I'm just pumped, man. Like I'm just so excited that the Pacers have taken care of business, and now it's like I'm going into this Boston series, and I know we'll talk about that, but it's just like completely stress free. Like whatever happens. Like it's completely stress free for me. Where like it was kind of like the Pacers had to win these last 2 series. It almost felt like because of the situations that they were dealing with for the opponent. So like now it's just like, all right, it's all gravy.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that it's funny that the narrative, and I get it, man. Giannis and Lillard are different pieces. The Knicks have missed a lot. I think Brunson was the only starter to start the season. Everyone else is out. But it is funny, like in the national narrative, like very rarely do you ever hear it brought up. Like Mathurin is hurt, and he was most of the times during the season our third best player. Like, can we please mention that? Like while we're talking about all of the injuries.
But when they do mention it, they pan to Isaiah Wong.
Yeah, I know. It's the wrong guy. I want to start here. I want to kind of go through a couple different players. Great, just an amazing game by Tyrese Halliburton. 26 points, 6 from 12 for 3, 10 of 17. He had 2 moments early on where he did the drive, had the layup, and then turned around and passed it back out. And the second time, I'm like, oh God, are we doing this again? Like I understand he's a pass first guy. He wants to get everyone involved, but it's like, dude, go for it. There's some times in game 6, in Gainbridge where I was talking to the guys behind me that I sit with, where like he was still doing that. He's like had lanes and wouldn't go for it. But he turned it around. He started talking some junk to people. I'd love to know, do you know who he was talking smack to?
I don't.
All right.
It had to be somebody that like,
it was somebody in the front row. Looked like he was wearing like a flannel shirt, but he was going at them. He hit some threes. He did kind of the too small thing. He looked and kind of like, and when they scored, he'd kind of be like, get that out of here. I mean, he looked like he had an edge. And, I'm going to start here because I was talking to a couple of friends before this. I think there was a lot on the line for Halliburton in this game because this playoffs, he's been kind of up and down. And it's one thing to play when you're injured and you can see it. it's another thing to kind of be just completely ineffectual or inconsequential, I'll say, to the game. And, game 1 against the Bucks, he only shot 7 times, scored 9 points. Game 5 against the Knicks, he had that weird game, only 13. Game 1, again, he only shot 6 times, had 6 points. He had a couple of games where it wasn't even that he looked like he was struggling. He looked like he didn't even want to be involved. And I'm still not sure what happened there. But had he done that again in Game 7, I think we would have gone into the offseason being like, what is going on here? And that wouldn't have been good. And it probably would have taken him, I was saying, like, if he did that, another run in the playoffs, it's like he'd probably have to go to an Eastern Conference Finals or a Finals to kind of get that off of his legacy. It would be there until, that's James Harden's MO right now, is he can't show up in big games. You almost need to do it twice to get rid of the one time you do it. He answered all of those questions. And now it's still kind of wondering what happened. But, go back and look. Like, Reggie Miller had a couple of clunkers there. Nobody remembers that. They just remember Reggie was clutch because Reggie was clutch. So I think, first off, I'll go with Halliburton, that I think this was not legacy defining, but legacy defining in the way that it helped him not have that stain stuck on his legacy early on in his career.
Yeah, it's like the post Pacers Paul George, he kind of fell off a cliff there. I mean, in terms of Halliburton, we had talked about it after each game on this podcast when he had those stinkers. It's like it was really hard to figure out what exactly was going on. Was he feeling things out? Like the back-to-back game 1s that were low shot volume, you're like, okay, maybe he's just like feeling out the landscape. You would wish that he didn't. But then like that game 5 stinker against the Knicks, it was just like, what the heck, man? Like, we were kind of, I think we were even chatting offline on him of just like, I'm a little worried, you know? And then I think Rick Carlisle's did some really nice things this series too, to free him up and figure some things out with him. In the last 2 games, he really went to like more 2-man game with Pascal and Halliburton. And that's the playoffs, right? Like, you put the ball in your best player's hands and ask them to go get you a bucket, or you put them in actions together. And it's like, that was really fun to see. I'm with you. It's like, I'm glad that he's not going to have to wear like this baggage of like, not up to snuff in the playoffs. And I guess the new term is front runner. I'm still trying to learn that one. I guess Tyrese Halliburton is a front runner according to Twitter. But yeah, it's just like, I'm so happy for him that, there's no bigger stage. Game 7 in the Garden, 3:30, you're on national television, shot at the Eastern Conference Finals on the line, and he just showed up and showed out. And that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a perfect comp because I'm going back and looking at his numbers, and they were ridiculous. But, Jokic, so hear me out here, because Halliburton is not Jokic. Jokic is awesome, 3-time MVP, a title winner, has a championship. But, early on, it did feel like Jokic needed to kind of figure out how to balance being a creator, getting everybody involved, but also getting his own. Now, looking at it, his first couple of playoff runs, he averaged 25 points in the 19 season, 19 playoffs. I averaged 24 points in 20 playoffs. I mean, he was bringing it pretty early on, but it did feel like he had to figure out what's the balance between getting other guys involved and getting my own. And once he figured that out, they suddenly win a title. I'm not saying the same trajectory, but it does feel like Halliburton is going through those same processes in real time, maybe with a little bit more struggle. But that would be my hope, is that, he's still trying to figure out, like, when he drives and kicks out instead of just taking it up, trying to figure out, okay, when is the best time for me to be aggressive? When do I get my teammates involved? And as I've always said, in the end, this team has taken his personality, and that's good. And so, while it is frustrating and it's very confounding sometimes, I'm okay with him driving and kicking more often than not. It's the just kind of not getting the ball and just standing there that was really, really concerning. But again, all of that is kind of off to the wayside, and you can now even, with kind of hindsight look back and be like, all right, well, maybe he was just, letting other guys get involved and he knew he could step up when he needed to and, was letting them get there. You can put a lot of stuff on it now that they won both of those series.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're exactly where you wanted to be,
Yeah.
right? And so hats off to everybody involved. Obviously, the playoffs, it's what makes it so fun is watching like the adjustments that are made at game. And it really felt like in Game 6, the Pacers found something there with Pascal and Halliburton. And it's, after Game 5, it was kind of funny. I even got some arguments with some buddies of like, do they max Pascal? The way he's playing, like, and it's like, yes, I still was a resounding yes, but now it's like, no question, right? And Tyrese even said it yesterday on the podium. He was, had Pascal to his side, and he's like, I think we're both going to be here for a long time, kind of foreshadowing what this offseason is going to bring in terms of Pascal. So, that's a good thing that your stars kind of showed up when the lights were brightest. Because easily could have shrunk, especially in that environment. And there was a touch of time in that third quarter where the Knicks made that run right out of half, and it's like, it's happening.
Yeah, no, I was. The refs are going to get involved here.
Exactly.
I'm happy you brought up Pascal. He's the second one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I thought he was just both these series. He's been instrumental in the first two Milwaukee games. He came out and was just on fire and definitely felt like, even though the Pacers had trouble figuring it out in the first game, it did feel like, all right, man, get on my back in Game 2. Like I'm going to show you how you need to steady the ship. And it felt like early on in this Game 7, you could feel like you saw Pascal was the guy who had been here before, understood what was going to happen, and kind of steadied the ship. And I think hit some early shots and just kind of got things under control. And throughout the game was kind of a guy you could go to and he could get his own. And it's funny, there's been, there's been some stuff coming out, other players like, oh man, he's easy to guard and do all that. It's like, all right, well, kind of, but he also, yes, he's kind of predictable with what he does, but he's also really effing good at it and gets his shot off. And, I thought it was a stark contrast. There was two guys available at the trade deadline, basically. It was Pascal and OG Anunoby. And, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I feel very comfortable giving Pascal that money now, knowing that he's provided in the playoffs and seeing that, when things ramp up, he's still there. And OG's former Hoosier, love him. I'd be scared shitless if I was the Knicks giving him a max contract because they have to, because they're in kind of the same, they've already committed to him like we committed to Pascal, but it's like he couldn't stay healthy in the season. And then in the playoffs, when you had to ramp it up, he got injured again. And that would be really concerning. And Pascal for the playoffs, this is, his other playoff runs, it's tough to compare because early on with Toronto, he was still young and was like such a third option. And then in the 22 playoffs, he only played 6 games, but he's averaging, 21 points at second highest. He had 22 in the 22 playoffs, oddly enough, but his shooting percentages are better. His 3-point shooting percent, like all of his numbers are better in the playoffs, and he's stepped it up. So to me, this, credit, a lot of credit here in the Pacers in this podcast to them going out and getting Pascal this offseason, and, getting a guy who has done this in the playoffs.
Yeah, and to the Pacers brass as well, like they did try to get OG too.
Yeah.
As part of this. So it's like, it's interesting how it's all played out. Let me throw a quick hypothetical at you. Let's say the Pacers could move off a couple pieces this year. OG's not committed to the Knicks, and he says, I want to come to Indiana. Do you figure out a way to make that happen, given what we just saw? And given like the chemistry of this Pacers team we currently see, because you're gonna have to move off some young pieces that are promising if that was what you wanted to do.
That's a great question. Probably not.
Because him and Halliburton were whispering yesterday in each other's ears, and that's been a couple of times that's been captured.
I would say probably not. I mean, I think OG's fantastic. We could definitely use his defense. And his offense is gotten a lot better, and I'd love to see him in space. I'm going to say probably not. I'm going to take off the no, but say probably not. It would really depend on who we're giving up. In that space, like maybe you probably have to move off of Toppin, who's not even re-signed. So you have to re-sign Toppin, move off of him. I would say probably not, but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, when he's healthy, he's so dynamic and
Yeah.
he's like exactly what the Pacers would need. But you're probably moving off of like a Mathurin or something if you're going to get him. And like I love Mathurin and what he brings to the table. And he's young and he's not costing you a max deal. Like, I don't know. Like, because OG and Pascal were on the same team
Yep.
this past season, like this year, and that team was not that good. And so it's like, I don't know. I would struggle with it a lot with how much money he's gonna be given. So I'm in your camp where it's a probably not. But if the Pacers went and did it, I would talk myself into it pretty quickly.
No,
too.
I'm saying. I mean, the thing that I don't like about it is where the Pacers are now. They're still going to have flexibility where you're going to have Halliburton in the max spot, but honestly, still a pretty team friendly max deal. You're going to have Siakam, I'm assuming, in the max spot. So you can have 2 max guys. If you go out and get OG at 3 max spots, like that's it. That's your team for the next 3 to 4 years. And I just don't, this is more of an offseason thing. We'll dig deeper into it. I think you got something here. You got a nice little core here. Maybe you can make a couple more moves to give yourself a little more oomph to go for it, but not lock yourself into basically it's now or never. And that's what I hope doesn't happen with this Eastern Conference Finals run, is that I hope the Pacers don't get too far ahead of themselves. But no, that's a great hypothetical. I would also say with Siakam and the trade, and to temper people for the offseason this year, that, when we got Siakam, it's like, some people are like, oh man, it's okay. Like, why don't you get somebody else, get Paul George? It's like, part of it is, everybody wants a top 5 guy. Like, those guys are not on the market. Like, you're about to play Jason Tatum. It's not like we can just, all right, well, what do we got to put together to get Tatum? It's like, you're not getting Tatum. You're not getting Anthony Edwards. Like, the guys that are available are available for a reason. And if you're the Pacers, you're probably not signing a dude like Siakam in free agency. You're just not. So go get him when you get him. And I do think teams and fans of the Pacers, sometimes we need to be realistic that you can only get who you can get. And if you're Indiana, that limits compared to like a Miami or a Lakers. And so, I mean, and again, when you look at what they gave up for Siakam, and we talked about it on this podcast, you basically did not give up anything. You gave up Bruce Brown, who was signed to kind of be moved. It was a $20 million 1-year deal. Second year was a team option. You gave up this year's first round. Fine. It's going to be a late first round pick. This year's draft sucks. You gave up the second first round, which is Oklahoma City's like 15th worst pick. So it's another late first rounder. And then you gave up another first rounder, I think in 26, which if you're good, that'll be a late first rounder. So it's like 3 pseudo second round picks and a guy you signed to trade.
Yeah. It's why you can't say enough good things about kind of the reset the Pacers made with Pritchard at the helm, going to get Halliburton, and then just building around that with a lot of young pieces. Like, Nesmith, we haven't talked about the Boston series yet, but he's going to come out with some fire. That's a team that traded him, and everybody talked about, traded him for a ball of string, or, they traded Brogdon, who's not even on the team anymore, for a ball of string, and, that ended up being Nesmith. So it's like, just hats off. We've sung the praises time and again of Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and those guys in the front office. But it's like, this is such a fun, exciting, young roster with some flexibility, as you mentioned, to plug and play a couple pieces. But again, like you said, I do think it accelerates their timeline a little bit, obviously making the Eastern Conference Finals, where it's like you've gotten a taste of this and you don't want to move backward, but you also don't want to get too far ahead of yourself and get yourself into some deals that kind of hamstring you, and then you turn into like the 2021 Hawks, where you made this run and then you take 5 steps backward and now you're blowing the whole thing up in 3 years.
They also have Trae Young, which is its own problem. But yeah, to me, the Hawks is the cautionary tale. I completely agree. The other praise, I have 2 more praises to go through, and then I want to hear if I missed anybody else. Rick Carlisle. Like, this is where having a real coach who knows what the hell he's doing is good. And you and I were both, critical is not the right word, but like actively concerned about how many guys he played in the first game against Milwaukee. Since then, Carlisle has done a fantastic job. And, nationally, people are giving him some heat for, why did he keep Nembhard on Brunson as long as he did in the series? And it's like, well, he kind of did. If you really watch the games, he didn't. Like, Nembhard was on him a little bit in game 5. That's because Neesmith had foul trouble. And
Right.
the way they were calling the game, it's like Neesmith was going to get called for a foul every single time he played him. So you had to move off of him. And he kept McConnell on him for most of the time. And the Knicks did a really good job of doing some switches to get Nembhard onto Brunson. But I can think of very few times in this series where Nembhard was the lead guard for Brunson. It happened a couple of times, but normally it was moved off of switches, or it was because the way Neesmith was playing, he was getting into foul trouble. So everything else Carlisle has done has worked and has done well, and he's getting guys in the right spots. He's playing them at the right times. I mean, the only thing that happened yesterday that was tough is like they had a fast break and he called a timeout in it. Even like Shepherd, like Halliburton's like common Shepherd. It was like, what the hell, man? We had a fast break. I still don't quite know about that one, but no, I mean, and this is where, you know, he had the advantage over Doc as a playoff coach. He had the advantage over Tibbs in that he actually runs a rotation and plays a bench. And I think he's going to have an advantage over Missoula. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but you know, this is where having a coach like Carlisle is just awesome. So to me, hats off to Rick Carlisle so far this offseason. Or this postseason.
And like when you're going game to game, like the game to game adjustments were fantastic. In-game adjustments a couple times in game 6 that he made were great stuff. And yeah, it's just like it gives you a level of comfortability and like calmness versus if it's like Nate Bjorkgren or you know, or even Nate McMillan, really, who hasn't had a lot of playoff success. So it's I'm totally with you. Rick Carlisle, I think, has done a phenomenal job. You know, he caught some heat because Nembhard was getting cooked by Brunson in game 5, but like nobody was guarding Brunson in game 5. The dude scored like 50 points. And, you know, he had an otherworldly experience. So it's like, or game. So the Nembhard guarded Brunson yesterday and did pretty well, you know, in certain spurts. And like you noted, like the Knicks are actively hunting how to get Brunson free and get favorable matchups for him. It's not like it's just like you roll the balls out and they just, you know, it's like you guard the guy wearing your wristband and you can't get off. So it's, you know, it's funny in that regard. But yeah, I'm with you, man. It's just been
well. I also like that he's done. You know, he's really been the team in the playoffs. You've seen other teams do this too, but he's really pushing not just the pace, but you know, basically the Pacers are playing like Kentucky '90s basketball. They're picking up full court. They started it in the Bucks series and kind of like, all right, man, we're going to wear you down, and it worked. And then same thing in the Knicks series. You could see it. They were just wearing them down, and you know, they were doing things, you know, like with McConnell when McConnell was guarding Brunson. You know, obviously McConnell's picking him up full court and just doing what McConnell does, being a pest. But then you saw like it was either Siakam or Miles Turner would come up high off the 3-point line and show an early double team. They wouldn't always double, but it's like it got Brunson. All right, now we got to think about like they were screwing with the Knicks offense so much at the beginning of every series, every possession. They weren't getting into their stuff for like 10 to 12 seconds.
Yep. Absolutely. And what I liked about Rick, too, is just a lot of gamesmanship and how he handled this series. You know, after game 2, the Pacers didn't really get screwed by the refs in game 2, but that was when he decided, like, we're gonna make a statement about the officials. He ate $35K, knowing he was going to eat $35K the second he opened his mouth, and, you know, tried to even some things up in terms of the officiating. And I think it just sparked a fire in the Pacers, too, of, like, our coach has our back. And, you know, he's seeing these things. And so, like, there's so much because he has all of this experience. I mean, he's won an NBA title. It was, you know, he kind of, you know, his legacy started getting a little bit on a negative trend, too, because people are like, he hasn't won a series since then. And now it's like, that's completely behind him. He's revived. So, yeah, it just, but the way I feel like he just had a calming demeanor that a young team like this needs. You know, it wasn't panic. After every single game that they lost, it was just like, you know, sounds like after game 5, they went to the film room and he got into their asses a little bit and just was like, this was unacceptable effort. And hats off, Pacers responded to that and were the tougher team the last 2 games. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about how Rick Carlisle handled this. You know, there's little micro things like we mentioned, the timeout, and like you're not going to make every decision perfectly, but in the macro picture, I don't know that there is a better coach for this group of guys that are like learning how to do a playoff run than Rick Carlisle. And so I'm happy he's the Pacers coach.
I got two more. I said I had three more. I have two more. I'm going to go to just I'm taking everybody from you. Just the entire bench. I mean, TJ McConnell, it goes completely. You can't say enough about what he's been doing. What I love about him is just how much of a nuisance he is in a good way. And I was, I had a friend over watching the game, and I was just saying, what I love about McConnell is, hold on, I'm pulling up the stats here just so I have them. What I love about McConnell is, he gives maximum effort all of the time. And he's like a shark now I'm saying this, like he's like a shark on the inbounds. Like he's waiting for you to just have one lapse of judgment and then he's going to go and get it. And I've seen so many steals of the inbounds pass. And then literally like 2 minutes later, he steals the inbounds pass from Brunson, passes it to, I think it was like Jackson, just a layup. And he provides so much. And so again, credit to him for just busting his ass, coming out off the bench and not even looking a bit scared at all. Just, I'm going to take control here. I mean, he's averaging 10 points a game in the playoffs. It's unbelievable. And also credit to the Pacers, because he was a piece that we talked about here. Is like, should you trade McConnell? Should you move off him? Is he kind of a luxury you don't need? Do you trade him for pieces that maybe you can use later? They didn't.
He was out of the rotation for a while this season.
Yeah. And they didn't. And now you got him, and he's on a pretty team-friendly deal. I think we pulled up. He's, $9.5 million next year. That's not fully guaranteed. I think there's some pieces there, but he's on a team deal. He's here for another year. He's exactly what you want from a bench player. And I also think it's, he's unique and different, and that plays well, in a series. And the thing I don't get, man, I just do not get, is for a guy who's, my height, 6'1", who is quick and good with the ball, but not just an unbelievable athlete. It's unbelievable. He can seemingly get his shot off and get to the rim whenever he wants. But dude, he's so crafty. Like one of the shots, they showed it in slow motion. Like he goes up. It's one where he double hang, but if you notice, he goes up for the shot. I think McBride was like gonna block it. He takes his shooting elbow, pushes McBride's arm out of the way, recenters his shot, and gets it off, all while in the air, for a guy who, has good vertical, but is not like a insane leaper. Like it's just like, dude, that is such high level shit.
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's so funny to me the way he plays, because it's like, exactly what he's going to do. He's going to try to get those inbounds. He's going to try to get to the rim. He's going to fade away from 5 feet and shoot it. And it's like, he just does it.
Yeah.
Like yesterday was game 97 for the Pacers, I believe. And he still got a steal on the inbounds pass.
I know.
Like,
I know.
He's been doing that for 96 games prior. And like you said, there's one lapse of judgment and he's going to pounce, like, blood in the water, and he pounces. So yeah, it's just, I'm with you. It's like an anomaly. Like, how does this dude get to that 5-foot spot, knows exactly what he's going to do? I mean, when he goes up, it's like 100% I expect it to go in. Like if he's shooting the ball, outside of if it's like a 3-pointer, like I'm expecting it to go in, because he's getting to his spot and he uses his size so well. Like he's learned, like, if I'm going to get shots off at the rim, I have to fade. Like, these guys would block me if I go straight up. So like he's perfected that. You can tell he's worked on that. And this is the dude that is 32 or 33 years old and playing the best basketball of his career. Like that's an anomaly of itself. He's certainly on the back half of his career and still playing very, very good basketball, and some of the best basketball he's ever played. So that's pretty wild too. And I think speaks volumes to kind of the system that the Pacers have, that somebody at that age and in this point in their career can be putting up like their career high numbers.
My buddy said, what were we talking about with him, is like that he doesn't, like, he's not good. Like he doesn't have any of the pieces that you would think make a fantastic basketball player, but yet he has everything that makes a great basketball player. Like he doesn't have any of the, I don't want to say physical attributes, because he is an athlete, but it's like he has everything,
the intangibles,
everything you need. And it is wild. You and I both love the NBA and watch it. For a lot of these guys, it's a job. It's amazing how he just gives effort all of the time. And even in a game 7, not saying the guys aren't giving effort, but it's like, just you lapse judgment. He's there. He pounces on it. But other guys on the bench, just real quick, Obi Toppin had a great series. Didn't have a fantastic game 7, but just had some moments. I think he comes in with some backbreaking plays. He brings in energy. Did not play as much in game 7.
4
and
assists.
Yeah. And a shout out to Ben Shepherd, man, for a rookie, a late first round pick to come in and play really good defense, hit a lot of threes. I mean, he's shooting 47% from 3 in the playoffs. That's bananas for a rookie, but it also shows, this is where I'm really bullish on the Pacers the next couple of years. This is a guy who's he's getting wide open, clean looks. So that spot, Shepherd could grow into that, but that's something where if you look in the offseason, like this is where it's really interesting to come to play for the Pacers. Cause it's like, look, man, you come in as a 3rd, 4th option, like you are going to be able to put up some career numbers because you are going to have wide open threes.
And I think it's a testament to the Pacers being willing to come off of Buddy Hield because they saw what they had in Ben Shepherd.
Great point. Yeah.
And obviously a lot cheaper where he's at right now. And they're like, look, we're going to get this dude some experience, move off of Buddy. And, he's thriving since that moment. Like, he's a guy that didn't get a lot of time early in the season and then has now become a key part of the rotation. And when he shoots the ball, he's another guy. Like, I'm expecting it to go in at this point. Like, he's been money.
No, I mean, and honestly, if you can have a dude like that on that contract, I mean, if he can provide you that, he can provide you 46% from 3 is out of control. But if he can give you 7 to 10 points a game, shooting, low 40% from 3 at $2.5 million a year, that is, and pretty damn good defense and only going to get better. That's unbelievable. Last one, high level, shout out and definitely need to say something about Andrew Nembhard for a guy who is in his 2nd year. This series, I believe the game was tied when he hit that 3 in game 3.
Yep.
But that game was in the balance. If the Pacers don't win that game, they're down 0-3 to the Knicks, probably cooked.
It's over.
More than likely, I would say it's cooked. But Nembhard hit that 3, and he's been a dog. He's also one who can kind of feels like he can get to the rim and finish whenever he wants. He can get to that little elbow jumper.
Strong as hell.
He has there's a part of him where it's like the ball's always in his hands. Feels like he gets it a little bit too much. Kind of that Marcus Smart thing where it's like, why is the ball always finding him? That said, man, he's got balls of steel. He does not care. He's not scared of the moment. He's a dog. He gets into people. Brunson was cooking him, but it wasn't for lack of effort. Nembhard was all over him and kept going. That's a real effing piece to have on your team. And again, that's a dude making $2 million a year. He's a starting shooting guard, and he's earning that role.
100%. For me, yesterday was just like, as a basketball purist, there is no more efficient offense than you can watch than what the Pacers did yesterday. 67% from the field, going to Andrew Nembhard, 8 for 10, 1 for 2 from 3, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 20 points. And like you said, that's a dude making $2 million in his 2nd year. What pick was he? He was like number 20.
He was a 2nd rounder, right? Or was he late?
Was he? I think he was late first. But yeah, late, somewhere in the 20s, I believe, was where he was drafted. I could be wrong on that, but for where he was drafted and what the expectations were for him, is just insane. He was 2nd. He was the 1st pick of the 2nd round,
okay.
31st overall pick. Just phenomenal. Like, he was cooking the Knicks. Like, whoever's guarding him yesterday, he was getting to the rim, like he said. He was distributing. He was rebounding well. He was just a tough son of a gun. Like, and he's a dude that's just like doesn't seem to really get phased much. Kind of even keeled, kind of stone faced. Doesn't really show a lot of emotion. And I think it was somebody in the national media talked about him like he's just a dog. Like he gets after it. He's gonna play his butt off. And another dude that I'm super glad he's a Pacer on a really, really nice deal right now.
So Anybody else you want to highlight? Because I want to move on to offseason, then do a Celtics preview. But anybody else you want to highlight from the last round?
Yeah, just a cool moment was Miles Turner walking into the locker room yesterday,
Miles. God,
and Kevin
yes.
Pritchard and
Thank
him
you.
shook up, and Miles like said something along the lines of like, "Thanks for believing in me," or
Yeah.
something like that. That was a really cool moment, and for Miles Turner, a dude that's been years and years of trade rumors and just is stuck with it, and has really just been a phenomenal piece throughout these playoffs. And yesterday, again, just tough son of a gun, 4 blocks at the rim, 17 points, 7 for 11 from the field. Seemed like he could, that pick and pop game with him was just rocking and rolling. Like, that's just a dude, like, you got to give him his flowers. He's been through so much as a Pacer in a lot more bad than good times. And it's finally like seeing the fruits of the labor and the grind. And you talk about like trust the process, type of thing. Like, he is truly like embodying that and thriving now, and is finally going to the Eastern Conference Finals as a Pacer.
No, and shooting 45% from 3 in this series. I mean, there's so many guys in this team where it's like if they're shooting and they got a clean look, I'm pretty sure it's going in. His mid-range game has been awesome. And that's a guy too. Like, this is where, you have to give the Pacers some credit. And it is funny how nationally it's kind of like, I mean, this team's, they're not a great team. And, they played a bunch of injured guys. Like, what to me is fascinating is Miles Turner should theoretically not be a hard player to scout. He likes hitting corner threes. He likes hitting top of the key threes, and he shoots top of the key. Like, you look at his heat chart, it looks like a T. I mean, it's corners and top, and that's where he shoots. He's not a from the angles, from the elbows type shooter, and yet he's always getting to those places, and he's always getting open looks. So that's not just teams not knowing this. This is the Pacers running motion to get him where he wants to go. And, for all the talk of how good Buddy Hield was playing with Halliburton, this has unlocked a level of Turner that I've never seen. And Turner understands exactly where to go with Halliburton. That one play they showed a bunch of times yesterday where Halliburton, drove to the basket, kind of did a 360 like he does, and just kicked it right out to Turner. He wasn't even looking. Like, he knew where Turner was going to be. Turner knows where to go. Turner then got a clean look that oddly wasn't in one of his heat zones. It was kind of off to the corner, left to center. But I'm with you, man. It's been awesome. And it's great to see for a guy who's been here for this whole process, and kind of like we've talked about before, not only been in trade rumors, but kind of had 3 different times where it's like, all right, man, this is my team. And then, no, it's not your team. And he really has never had an issue with that, or kind of pulled the like, man, screw that, I want to be an alpha somewhere. Last thing I'll say too is, like, I would say in these playoffs, he's never looked scared either. Like, he's never come in with open eyes. Like, he looks like he's ready to play and be in that moment.
Yeah, got called out a little bit. Obviously Hartenstein had that game 5 where, he was just like prime Rodman, where he had 11 offensive rebounds or whatever, and Miles responded. And the Pacers out-rebounded the Knicks the next 2 games, and Miles was a big part of that, and checking Hartenstein. And so, yeah, you just can't say enough good things about Miles and what he means to this organization. And especially after the Pacers kind of, what was it, 2 seasons ago, did the restricted free agent deal with Ayton, and it's like, all right, Miles Turner's time here is done.
Yep.
And, like, thank you to the Phoenix Suns.
No kidding.
For matching that. And then the Pacers, again, just talk about the front office. Like, Miles is on a great deal, and just been a lot of fun to see how he's kind of thrived, and it just looks like he's having fun out there. And, like, that hasn't always been the case with him as a Pacer.
One thing I want to throw out before we talk just a little off-season stuff, and then let's get to the Pacers Celtics, but I was thinking about this, and I did it was more just a thought experiment about Embiid winning the MVP last year. I think in the last 20 years, and I think if you go back, it might be 30 or 40, I think Embiid might be the first, I'm pretty sure in the last 20 years, is the first MVP to have never gotten to a conference finals. And most MVPs have gotten to a finals or won a title. Like, Nash didn't get there, but Nash made a bunch of Western Conference, or a couple Western Conference finals. Mm-hmm. But I was just thinking about it, and then thinking about, just what the Sixers went through from the 2013-14 season, here's their win totals. They went 19, 18, 10, and 28. So that was the bottoming out process. That was, you mentioned, trust the process. They went 4 seasons. They basically just punted away. Since that point, they've made this conference semifinals 5 times and lost in the first round twice. They never made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's more a credit to the Pacers. And again, I think I have a friend who's a Philadelphia fan, and we've talked about it ad nauseum. We could do a pod on it. I still think the process is an interesting way to go about things. I think that they just had horrible luck picking players, and they also made a lot of bad picks and, traded off of, Tatum to get full. It's like they didn't maximize their first round picks. It's also kind of a crapshoot. Like, is LeBron going to be there as a number 1 pick, or are you getting Ben Simmons? It's like that sucks. You had the wrong pick at the wrong time. That said, it's again a credit to the Pacers. They didn't do a bottom out, put us through 3 years of just absolutely sucking. Because how much would it suck to be a Philly fan? You do all of that, and then you still don't even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Pacers, who rebuilt on the fly. Now, granted, a lot of things broke their way, but part of maximizing luck is being in the right place at the right time, and the Pacers were there and they maximized on it. So it's just credit to a Pacers team that kind of did this all on the fly.
It's been awesome. Ever since that Halliburton trade, I've been, re-engaged in terms of just like how excited I was about the Pacers. I remember, as soon as after he played a couple games, you were texting me like, dude, you got to see this guy in person. Like,
oh yeah,
he's fun on TV, but like in person, like when you can just see how he sees the floor. And like ever since then, it just has been a lot of fun to be a Pacers fan. And then what I kind of like is like, to me, this Eastern Conference Final run validates that in-season tournament run.
Yeah,
like,
it's a great point.
People are like, that was a Mickey Mouse run or whatever. But it's like, we're back. Here we are. We're back. We played the Celtics to get into the in-season finals, and now we're playing the Celtics to get into the conference final or to the NBA finals. So it's like it validates that run too.
Yep.
And to me, it's like because all these people are talking about this is the easiest path to an Eastern Conference Finals ever for any team ever, and it's like, first of all, never going to apologize for winning.
Right.
Second of all, it's like this isn't just some fluke like of a team. Like this team did make a deep run in a tournament that it's obviously wasn't as big as the NBA playoffs, but it was bigger than regular season basketball, and teams were trying to win. And the Pacers made a great run in that thing. So that's what I like about all this run too. Is it's like you validate some things that you did early in the season as well.
Agreed. So looking ahead to the Celtics series.
Before we look ahead, one quick note.
Yeah.
The broadcast leading in yesterday was just, gosh.
So happy you mentioned that. It is like just letting Stephen A. Smith have an orgasm on the pregame talking about the Knicks. No, I'm so happy you mentioned that. I was
unbelievable. It
was bananas. It's like, dude, I understand it's media, but like this is supposed to be impartial. I'd watch MSG Network if I wanted this. Exactly. Oh, it was awful. It was horrific.
Well, that's what I saw some Knicks fans like. Who cares? It's just the broad. It's like, well, there is 2 fan bases watching this, and then they go to halftime, and she asked Bob Myers, "Hey, how about those Pacers? Talk about the Pacers in that first half." And he says, "Well, OG Anunoby couldn't go," and then he talks about the Knicks for the next 5 minutes. It's like, goodness gracious! Like, I get it. There are more Knicks fans watching this than Pacers fans, I'm sure of it, and the East Coast media bias and all that good stuff. But it's like, they literally had a fan doing sideline leading into the game, and Stephen A. Smith brings in the most hated Knick fan and Spike Lee on the broadcast. Like, I got Spike. We want to win. And it's like, screw that. Like, this is a national TV broadcast, and it just left a really sour taste in my mouth in terms of how ESPN production allowed it to get to that level. It's
totally agree. They had video of Stephen A. Smith walking in like he was a player. And I'm with you, because fine, you can be excited. You have people who are in the New York media, like you can do some of that, but then set the stage for like what bothered me is like maybe it doesn't have to be 50-50, make it 70-30. Fine. I get it. New York's a big market, but like somebody set the stage for what's at stake for the Pacers here. Like there is another team here. Like what's, at that point, it's like, is Halliburton going to shit the bed? Is Halliburton going to step up? Carlisle, is he going to win a series? Like, there are stakes for the Pacers, and you should just, as a media conglomerate, or a station, you should just want to do a little bit of selling both sides, because the Pacers could win, and the Pacers won, and now you have them against the Celtics. Maybe you just talk about Boston the whole time, but it's like at some point you might want to sell this team that's going to be in the next round and push some of those storylines out there.
Yeah, it's why I much more appreciate the TNT crew.
Yeah.
And how they attack storylines, and obviously they're just, to me, more appealing just in terms of entertainment level. But yeah, it was very aggravating to watch, because it's just like you said, like, okay, I'll just go watch the MSG network.
Yeah.
If this is what I want to see. I mean, yeah, just
no, the Stephen A. Smith stuff was disgusting. It was really bad.
Just poor form.
Yeah. And I'm with you. The TNT, that's a national platform. You watch the post-game TNT show, like they talk about both sides. And even when they talk about, I think they're going to get smoked, it's like they still bring up points on both sides. Like that's a crew that feels way more impartial, where it did feel like this was just a New York orgasm, and we're so excited to be playing a Game 7. It's beautiful, like it's packed, because MSG's, it's just like enough.
Yeah, and by the way, leading into this series, every single media member picked the Knicks to win the series, knowing all of the injuries and everything that happens. And so miss me with all the narratives of, well, the injuries are what won the Pacers the series. It's like, no, you picked the Knicks to win, knowing everything that we knew.
Yeah.
And so miss me with all that.
I'm excited to get your preview for the Celtics and your prediction, because you were right in this series. All of this said, and I'm with you 1,000,000%. It does. We've been playing with house money for a while. Now we are truly playing with house money. And even at this point, getting blown out or getting swept out, I feel like it's like, all right, man, good enough. Like that was quite a run. That said, anybody would be nuts to pick the Pacers in a series here. Here's the things I will say is, if the Pacers can shoot the way they've been shooting, they can beat anybody. Like that is the fun thing with this team, is if they play, I kind of wish it was a college basketball team, because then it's like they could win, they could win the whole thing. Winning a series is different, but man, if they play this way and they're able to shoot at these clips, they could win this series. The Celtics have a real habit of sleepwalking through parts of games and entire games, where they just look totally checked out. You've seen it in this playoffs when they lost to the Heat in Game 2. It's like, whatever, we can take them, and they did. Like, to their credit, they can then just turn it on. You do wonder if maybe you get back to Indiana and they kind of they don't, if the Celtics don't show up in Game 3, but then the Pacers come out and are blistering hot and punch her in the mouth, and it's like a 2-2 series. It's like, hey, Celtics are like, what the hell's going on? I think it's also worth noting, you're going to have a third series where you have a coaching advantage. Missoula has listening to Celtics fans, they are concerned with the way Missoula does changes and adjustments. I think it's going to be another series where you're going to see the adjustments better for the Pacers. And the last thing I'll say is, I think the Pacers do have a better bench than the Celtics. I think the Celtics are no question better 1 through 5, but I think if you go 1 through 9, the Pacers might have the advantage. And then, lastly thing is, this is similarly to what I felt with Milwaukee in round 1. The longer you can keep this going, and the more tough moments you can make for the Celtics, and if you can, win a game and go up, 1-1, and then you're coming back to Indy, if you go back to Boston up 3-1 with Game 5, or even if it's 2-2 and it's a tight in Game 5, all of the pressure is on Boston. I mean, if Boston does not win the East with this team, what they've been through, and the path that's laid out in front of them with the teams they had to play, this is an absolute fucking disaster for the Celtics. Like, they have to make the NBA Finals. Pacers do not. Pacers, we lose in 4. We're like, all right, man, that sucks. But hey, that was a run. So I do think the deeper this series can go, the more the Celtics could get a little bit tight. And Boston crowds, they get tight. They're used to this. I mean, not lately, but they have had this in their past. And this Celtics team has at times not shown up when it matters. So all of those things are pieces that I kind of look to be hopeful. That said, I wouldn't pick the Pacers to win this series, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, it sounds like Porzingis is going to be out these first 2 games.
Correct.
I think that's a great opportunity for the Pacers to maybe catch the Celtics sleeping in one of those two and, have a hot shooting night and somehow steal one and go back home at 1-1. Like, that's best case scenario for me, obviously, is like certainly wouldn't be the Pacers 2-0. Like, there's zero chance of that happening probably.
Yeah.
But if you could steal one of these games without Porzingis, get back home, you haven't lost at home in 2 months.
Right.
Obviously, various things have happened in those 2 months, but like you haven't lost at home in 2 months. Like, I'm not saying the Pacers are 100% going to win a game at home, but like I feel pretty good about them getting one against the Celtics, just given the home court advantage that they've been afforded,
Right.
for the past couple of months. So it's like if you could steal one in Boston and then you get one at home, I think you probably lose in 6, but that ain't bad for
No.
me. Like, that's ultimately where I think this ends up. I think Boston wins it in 6. But would be like ecstatic if that were the case. And like, whatever, call me a sore loser or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
or not a true whatever. If they make it to 6 and lose, like, I'm already happy. Like,
Yep.
that we're here. Like, that we're ahead of schedule. So, to me, that's probably like best case scenario is losing 6. Boston certainly has the talent to sweep. Like, they just do. Like, they've got Drew Holiday who can lock up, Halliburton, and you've got obviously Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are, some of the best players in the league. You've got Derek White, who's shooting the piss out of the ball. Peyton Pritchard's pretty damn good shooting the ball. So it's, when you look at those things and you look at how the Pacers play, it's tough. It's they have the advantage. I think I just looked, they're 9.5-point favorites in game 1. The Celtics are, and so the Pacers have their backs against the wall. But that's honestly like the Pacers have played better with their backs against the wall than they have this season. Like, where they're the favorite, or they're picked to win, or they're going to play against a lowly Bulls team or whatever. Like, this is kind of the place where they've thrived all year, like including in the in-season tournament, including during the regular season. Now, there was a game Boston beat the Pacers by 50 early in the year. But to the Pacers' credit, they also beat Boston a couple times this season during the regular season. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'll be interesting to see what the Pacers do offensively to try to get Holiday off of Halliburton and try to shake him free a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited to just see kind of how it all plays out. And we've said it time and again, like, it's all gravy from here, and just I'm excited to see what happens.
The thing that was killing the Pacers in the Knicks series was just the insane effort by Hart and Hartenstein to get second chance points. And that's where the Knicks were scoring a lot of their points, was when they'd get second chance points. Even DiVincenzo was getting rebounds. Like, that Knicks team was just like a monster that wouldn't go away. Celtics don't do that. I mean, the Celtics are good, and I'm not saying they don't put out effort, but they don't have those just insane dogs like that. Like, Tatum is very measured. He's fantastic, but he's very measured. Jaylen Brown is a little bit of that in him, but he's not that Josh Hart type. Like, there isn't a Josh Hart type on the Celtics. Maybe White, Pritchard kind of, but he doesn't have the athleticism. Like, so that's a thing where, if you can get rid of some of, you don't have that. And even the Bucks, with Portis and Pat Bev, like, they're just kind of screwing around and getting the Pacers out of their the way they play. Celtics don't really have that either. Like, the Celtics are very business-like. They just come out and do their business, and maybe they'll just kick the living shit out of the Pacers, and that's fine. But I look at that too as, that's where the Pacers struggled, with second chance points, and just like the fact that Knicks were kind of out-efforting them at some times. I don't see the Celtics doing that either. And I think no Porzingis. It's funny. Go back to some of the podcasts. That's what you and I were talking about with the playoffs in, February and March, when we looked at how things laid out. It's like, if we could just stay away from the Celtics, and then you find a way to get there, and that's like, maybe Porzingis gets hurt, and the Celtics aren't as tough. And like, we're here now, and Porzingis is hurt because he always gets hurt. It's a matchup. It's like, all right, you put Tatum on Siakam. It's like, who's going to guard Turner for them? Like, you going to put Horford on Turner? Like, Turner could go nuts. But on the flip side, I mean, there's a ton of matchup problems for the Pacers on the, who's going to guard Holiday, who's going to guard Jaylen Brown. Like they have, Neesmith's going to have to take one of those guys, and he's probably going to get cooked. And then you have McConnell and Nembhard. Nembhard's going to get cooked. Like Neesmith is going to be a maniac. He plays it great against the Celtics because he used to play for them. So I don't know, man. I think in the end, I would have to say it's probably going to be Celtics in 5. I'm a little less optimistic. But I think there's a world where it's more likely 5 or 7. I think if, there's a world maybe the Pacers just hold court at home and they just can't win in the Garden. I think that's a possibility. But yeah, I would say the Pacers probably lose in 5 or 7 is my feeling. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Like you said, it's all gravy at this point.
What's interesting to me is obviously the Celtics are the number 1 seed, more talented. But it's not like their run to this Eastern Conference Finals hasn't had the same things the Pacers dealt with in terms of the injuries that the opponent had.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell didn't
Jimmy
play.
Butler gets hurt.
Yep.
Donovan Mitchell's out.
Such a great point. No one's talking about that. Yeah. And
I mean, granted, they took care of business a little bit better. They won in 5 in both series, but at the same time, too, it's like they've been pretty lucky in terms of who they've faced as well.
It's a great point. And nobody's talking about that. That's such a good point. I mean,
shit, the Cavs, they were down like Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, half their lineup was out too.
Dude, it's such a great point. I will say this, like, let's just be fanciful for a second. If the Pacers find a way to get through this Celtics team, which is a big, it's like Office Space where like the Bobs are like profit sharing, like it's a big if. But profit sharing, this is a huge if. But if they get through this, why can't they win the title? I mean, seriously, like at that point, it's like you're probably playing the Timberwolves, and then I'm not now you have 2 teams that are kind of just on heaters and like who can keep their heater going. They have Edwards, so they're going to have the best player in the series, but you just dealt with Brunson with something similar. You just throw a bunch of dudes at Edwards, and I'm fine seeing if Cat can beat us. I mean, this does feel it's not like some of the other runs where, you keep finding bigger and badder bosses as you go. And like when the Pacers finally got through the Knicks and it's like, we're in the finals and like, oh shit, we have the absolute prime of Kobe and Shaq. Anthony Edwards is still early in his comeuppance, so to speak. And the Mavs are good and you have a Luka, but I mean, dude, Luka, you could run him to death. Like Luka doesn't want to run. He wants to drink sweet tea and bitch at the refs. Anyway, I look at this as like, I don't think you can get past this level, but it does feel like I don't think the big boss in the finals is going to be as tough as the Celtics are right here.
Totally agree. And I think that's why the national narrative for the Celtics is like, you got to go win it this year. Like,
yeah,
based on all the other factors that we just talked about. So yeah, if the Pacers can figure something out. And I said this last pod, like this team reminds me so much of that 2011, 2012, I believe, Pacers team that like kind of came out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden they were in game, they were up 2-1 on the Heat in that series. And everybody's like, whoa, like where,
what's
what
going
happened
on?
here? Like,
yeah.
That reminds me of this team. Like, I feel like the Pacers could do something like that. Like, just kind of come out of nowhere, get out in front of Boston, get their attention, and then probably get their asses handed to them a little bit. But, like, I don't think that it's just far and away. Like, I don't think the Pacers have 0 chance. Now, do they have a great chance? No. But, like, Boston's super talented, but they lack, like, some of that edge that, like you said, like the Knicks and the Bucks had, where it's like, to me, they're a team that would be like prime for buttholes getting tight, and like they have all the pressure on them, and that wears on you a little bit when you have all those expectations and pressure. And the Pacers are playing with house money. They're loose. They're free. They're young. They're so young and inexperienced that like they don't even really understand the magnitude of this probably as much. And so it's just like, I like that. Like that's a fun team to root for and get behind. And like we said, Celtics come out and just absolutely kick their ass, and you tip your cap and assume they probably go win the NBA Finals. But it'd be pretty damn cool if the Pacers could make a dream run here.
Come on, 2 minutes. We're dumb podcasters having fun, and at this moment, the series is still 0-0. So like the next time we pod, it might be 0-2 and it's different. Pacers beat the Pacers beat the Celtics. They go to the finals and insane. They win the finals. It would be probably the craziest title we could think of in years. I mean, maybe that Mavs win against the Heat, but that still had a Dirk Nowitzki who was, won an MVP at that time, was on his way to top 20 player of all time. This would be unlike anything we've seen, and it's probably why it isn't going to happen. But let's just, again, 1 minute of fun. What's the point of having a podcast if you can't fuck around a little bit? Sorry, I've cursed way more in this pod, but it's a good time.
Hey.
Why not? Yeah, win in Rome. If they do something like that, even if they get to the finals, if they win a chip, I mean, it's like Halliburton becomes a dude. Like, it's like you now how he plays in those games is going to matter, but if he has a similar game 4, all of that early, stuff he had in game 5, like that all goes away. If he comes in and just hits a bunch of threes, talks a bunch of smack and takes down the Celtics and then wins the finals, like suddenly it's like, man, this is not the face of the league, but this is a real dude who's got a chip. Like, he's there with a championship. And then it's like, would you start your team with him, Halliburton over Tatum? Like it would change so many narratives. Again, probably why isn't going to happen, but it would. I mean, McConnell becomes just an absolute god in the city of Indianapolis. He could just live here forever and dine out for free. The Siakam trade becomes one of the best in-season trades of all time. I mean, it would be bananas, and you would have a team. You'd have discussions like, is this the first team to ever win a title without any first or second team All-NBA guys? Like, maybe no All-NBA guys, depending on where Halliburton gets happening this week, depending on where Halliburton goes on it. So it would be wildly unprecedented.
And it would probably change how some executives in the league look at team building.
Yeah.
Because the Pacers are their strength is their depth. And it kind of reminds me of that Dallas run, because that was kind of how they did it.
Yeah.
They got real deep, and they had like JJ Barea coming off the bench, kind of in a McConnell role. And yeah, I think it would change how teams look at team building, because it obviously you want the best players. Like, that's how you become good. But it's like, you look at a team that has 12, 13 guys that you can play on any given night, that you can kind of plug and play into a system that's wide open. Like, it would certainly get the attention, especially of smaller markets, on kind of how you could build a team. Now, granted, like we said, like, probably won't happen based on all the other things we just said, but like, if it did, like you said, a lot of things.
Well, that Dallas thing is actually kind of interesting, because for those, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but it's like 15 years. Like, for those. There's people who listening who may not have been alive at that time. But anyway, that series, the Heat were the huge favorites going into that year, but their assholes got tight. Like, it got to be too much for them. And, the Mavs were able to put some pressure on them. And they got to a point where, like, JJ Barea, like 6'1", like, he was the McConnell of his day, was guarding LeBron. Like, for those who didn't remember the series, like, that was peak, like, absolute apex LeBron. And you had, like, JJ Barea, McConnell, guarding him and doing a great job. And, like, LeBron wouldn't post him. It was bananas to see, but you just saw, like, they were in their own head deeply. And there's a world where if you can put the Celtics in a spot where they feel like it's slipping away, I could see that happening too, because the same expectations are on this Celtics team that are on that Heat team. That was a Heat team where LeBron hadn't won a title yet. He hadn't gotten it. And he was pressing, and he was gripping the bat way too hard. And I could see the same thing for Tatum, because if you're Tatum, you look at this and it's like, dude, if you don't get it now, Bill Simmons has been all over this, but it's like, this is an 8-year run where they've been fantastic, but haven't cashed it in. Doesn't normally stay together. And it's going to be really hard for the Celtics to keep this thing together. So that to me is the blueprint, is you've got to just continue to put the Celtics in positions where they feel like it's slipping away. And if it does, maybe they get so tight they're not able to do it. And dude, that was a Miami team that was coached by a young Spoelstra. This is a Boston team that's coached by Mazzulla, who I don't think is a young Spoelstra.
Correct. That was the point I was about to make. It was like that. That was the Heat with one of the best coaches ever.
Yep.
This is a Celtics team with a guy the jury is still very much out on, and kind of fell into the role because Udoka,
Yep.
Got in trouble or whatever. So it's exciting, man. That's like what I keep coming back to. Is it's just like I'm super pumped. It's Pacers and Racers season.
I know, it's wild.
Just nostalgic. It's fun, exciting, and it's quick. It's like they play tomorrow.
I know. No, so it's going to be game. I mean, we're going to be. It'll be the 500 in Game 4 before you know it. All right, do you have 5 minutes to do off-season talk just for fun?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
You were talking. I loved your question about do you go for OG? I would say this. This team. Let's just make the assumption that we're going to re-sign Siakam. That leaves really only one decision to be made. Is McDermott is expiring. I'm assuming you let McDermott go. McConnell's re-signed. Mathurin is re-signed. Halliburton, Nesmith, Jalen Smith has a player option. So I guess you wonder if he picks that up. Probably, because he hasn't played much. So I think he'd take the 5.7 million. Isaiah Jackson has a team option for 4.4. I think you pick that up, no question. Shepard and Nembhard are signed. James Johnson is not, but that's not a big deal. If he couldn't get in game 4 against the Knicks, he's never getting in a series. The only question is, do you re-sign? Are you able to give Obi Toppin an offer? And it looks like he's a restricted free agent, so you could offer him something. And other teams can match. I think you hope that they don't. But you're bringing back basically the whole team. And, the guy I didn't mention that I think is something to keep in mind that we've talked about a bit is Jarris Walker. You're basically bringing a top 7 draft pick onto this team next year that I think has to be thought of. Is like, if he really is a dude who can play even at a Mathurin type year 1 level next year, that's a real piece that you're bringing in. You're bringing in a now 1-year seasoned, lottery pick. The other question, if he just sucks, maybe he didn't play because he sucks. We just don't know. That's a real question mark. But if he is able to be at a, NBA lottery type level player, that's a huge add to a team without giving anything up. So to me, I look at the offseason at this point is you have something really cool with this core. You got 1 more year with it. I would run it back and see how things go versus trying to make a bunch of changes. Because honestly, in 2 years, things get way different because suddenly now you're getting into the heart of a Siakam and Halliburton pay scale. You're going to have to figure out what you do with Turner, with McConnell, with Jackson. Shepard and Nembhard become team option eligible. They're going to be getting ready to make some money. Like, things get pretty dicey in 2 years. I would say run it back 1 more year, but you're going to have to figure out what to do with Turner and McConnell at some point next year also.
Yeah, it's interesting because everything that we've mentioned of like your timeline maybe gets accelerated a bit based on this run, but you also don't want to become the Atlanta Hawks.
Right, exactly.
Where you start pressing, because I think the Pacers have gotten into the situation they're in because they haven't pressed. They've been very much like, we're going to remain financially flexible. We're going to get guys on good deals. And like, to me, if you stray from what got you there, you might get yourself into some trouble. Now, I'm not saying I don't want the Pacers at some point to like go all in and make a run, but I just don't know. It's with this roster structure, and the flexibility that they have, and guys on these team-friendly deals, if you start trading some of those team-friendly pieces for, big money guys, then you run into situations where you lose the depth that has gotten you this far. And, you got a bunch of dudes on minimum contracts and then 3-4 stars. And like, to me, that's just, you're playing with fire at that point. So I'm kind of with you. I'm with you in terms of running it back. Now, obviously, if a situation arises where, there's some can't miss player on the market, or the Pacers have been pretty good at identifying guys that are in bad situations and then getting them here and maximizing them, Naismith, Halliburton, and things like that. So if they have a piece like that, like, great. Maybe I could be talked into figuring something out there, but I just really like this team, man, and the way that they play and the way they're structured. And, I'm on my 96th, 97th game of watching them, and it's still fun basketball to watch. And so I'm with you, where I
Well,
don't see a lot of movement this offseason.
and also you look at it, it's like you didn't get a full year of Halliburton and Siakam. You didn't have a fully healthy Halliburton year. You didn't have Mathurin for the second half of the year. There's a lot of Jarris Walker. Like Jarris Walker's going to have to play next year. Like you can't do 2 years of development with that type of player. Because now you're getting into like he becomes eligible for extensions before you've even played him in the league. So you're going to have to bring Walker in. Like those are all things that theoretically all make this team better. That could push them into the 50-win camp. So I think you have to let it run. To me, the real question is, and maybe these are actually easier answers as I think about it. What do you do with Turner and what do you do with McConnell? Because McConnell is indispensable. But in 2 years he'll be 34. He's going to make $9.3 million next year. That's again, it's not fully guaranteed. I'm not sure how that all works out. I don't see a world where he's going to go out and get $20 million at 34 years old. A TJ McConnell. There's a world where maybe you just are able to keep him in that $7 to $8 to $10 million slot. And again, the way the league is changing, I think you're just going to have less guys in that range. I think salaries are going to go either you're making max or you're not making a lot. So there may not be a market for McConnell to make that. So I think you might be able to keep him in that range. Turner's at $20 million, this 20.9 next year, 19.9. So basically 20 and 20. You look at like Brook Lopez with the Bucks. He kind of kicked around free agency and he got re-signed for I think 2 for 20 or 3 for 60. He's making about $20 million a year. Like that seems to be the going price for that position. And so I don't think it's illogical to think you could sign Turner again for maybe a 3 for 60, keep him, until he's 34, 35 years old in that. And I think he'll age well. His defense will go down, but he can still hit the three. Where Turner gets tough is if he goes to free agency or he wants to look at making 25 or 30 million a year. I don't think the Pacers can afford that, but I'm not sure he can get that in the market with the way the league is. Cause I just don't think there's going to be a lot of $30 million a year guys. I think the league's moving toward max or sub 10. So I think you could probably get him in that 17 to 20 range. I don't know. That's how I look at things. I think you can keep this team together for even a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I think the Pacers, have showed their loyalty to Miles, obviously, in terms of him being the longest tenure, longest tenured Pacer for quite some time, and front loaded some money, some cash to him last year on that extension, and I think that could go a long way too. Of like, hey, we did you solid last time, like, let's figure out something here to keep us together for the long term. And I think Miles likes it here. There's not a lot of like media pressure or anything that you might have in some other markets to perform every single night. Cause like he does have some stinkers that, and people get frustrated with how he plays from time to time, but like, you don't really have a lot of pressure here in terms of that. Like, you might have some bozos on Twitter or whatever, but like outside of that, like you're not getting called out in the media all the time or something like that. So like, I think he suits what the Pacers do really well. I think he likes it here. And then if you're contending year in, year out, like, you're not really going to go to a better situation if you're doing that. So, if you're just bag chasing and going after money, you might go into unrestricted free agency and go play for the Wizards or something for $30 million. But like, I don't know that you want to end your career that way.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think Miles and the Pacers figure out a way to get something done in this ballpark where he's been. And then, the McConnell's kind of the wild card there because I think he's put the whole league on notice of like, damn, this is like an indispensable piece. And so I think some teams will come calling and want him, obviously. But at the end of the day, too, he's not a 35-minute a game guy that you're going to play. He's very much a spark. And,
well, we have him locked up for another year. And it's like then he's like, do you really, he's 32 this year. He'll be 33 next year. It's like, is he still going to have that value at 34, 35, 36? No knock to him, but it's like, it's going to be a diminishing asset. This is probably the height of what you're going to get at TJ McConnell.
Yeah. So, I think we're in alignment on those.
Yeah.
pieces.
I don't think they make a huge move. I could honestly see them just sitting out free agency, maybe getting an extra piece. But to me, it's like just your goal this offseason is get Siakam re-signed to the max and re-sign Obi Toppin if you can. If you do those things, you have a full team. Like I guess you have the McDermott spot open, but you don't have a lot of money to offer there. I think it's just you bring everything back and see how it goes, and then you can use next year to say, do we start looking to move and match some of these pieces? And, if Jarris Walker is coming in and taking a lot of the Mathurin or Shepherd minutes, who knows what he's going to take, do you look to move that? Or if it looks like Walker's not going to be able to fit in the rotation with those, do you then move him? And I think that's where you're going to see some of that. Or maybe Walker comes in and takes, Nemhart's minute, because we saw Walker play a little point guard. I don't know, but I think you're going to see more of that than them going big this offseason. And I think the idea is that the fever dreams we had of Paul George are way out the window at this point.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Unless you're moving off of guys. It's interesting with the Tyrese contract. It's going to be $30 million more, obviously, next season on the books, but you're losing $13 million in just dead money to Daniel Tice, Furkan Korkmaz, and Corey Joseph alone. So you're getting $13 million off the books. And
shout out to Juwan Morgan making $500,000.
Yeah, Juwan, Nick Stauskas, and Malik Fitz are still on the books next season.
I love
those are always
talk.
hilarious.
I love dead money talk.
No, you're just right. Recently got Monte off the books.
No, you're getting basically $24 million off the books when you throw in, or $25 when you throw in McDermott, who's playing, so it's not dead money, but that's theoretically just a dead money spot. Yeah. So but you're gonna re-sign Siakam.
You're gonna add Siakam, yeah.
But you add Siakam, you're still only at like 140. This is where, all right, we got to wrap up. But this is where I will say I do hope. I think the Pacers have always done things measured, and it's got them in a good position here. I do really hope the Pacers are willing and able and going to dip their toe into the tax for a couple of years here, which they've been kind of reticent to do over time, because just by signing Siakam to the max, you're going to be in the tax based on this lineup. And everything that I've heard, through, again, I don't have league sources, but just hearing podcasters, people talk about it, is that it does feel like the teams are concerned about the aprons, not the taxes. That when you get into the tax, it is a dollar for dollar match. So extra, every million you're over, you have to put another million in. But it doesn't really become an issue until you get into the first apron and the second apron, which we can talk about later in the offseason. So I hope the Pacers, and I agree with staying away from the aprons, because some of that stuff is pretty tough to deal with. And you're going to see teams, we've been saying for a while, like the Bucks they're screwed. Like a lot of these teams just don't have a lot of outs. And I think fans are going to come to realize it real soon, where it's like, well, why aren't we doing anything? It's like, because you can't, because the NBA is making it that way. But I do hope the Pacers are willing to go into the tax, not apron level, but just dip into that territory, because that would be a bummer if after this season it's like, all right, man, we got to cut, Ben Shepherd and, Nemhart just so we can keep under the tax. Like, I really hope they don't do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it always just seemed like Simon is willing to go into the tax if the team is going to contend.
Yeah.
And, I think this is one of those situations where they will be able to contend. They've proven that. So I don't think that's a hindrance. I'm with you on the apron stuff. That's where it gets scary, and you really start getting limited in what you can do. But yeah, I'm totally with you in terms of, if you got to go into the tax a little bit, you got to do it to keep things as they are. Like, you don't want to get worse because you're afraid to go into that tax.
Yeah. Well, and this is also last thing. And this is, it's every year, but let's get Siakam signed to that extension, because these are going to be great deals in 3 or 4 years. Do it before the TV negotiations come out. Like, they're going to announce the new TV money deals pretty soon this offseason. And then once you do that, a 140 cap is going to look cheap. Like, the cap's going to probably go to like 170, 180. Like, all of this stuff is going to be super easy to negotiate. And, when we look at the 2027, 2028 season, Haliburton making 44 is going to look like a steal. I mean,
oh yeah,
get ready for it. Guys are going to be making 70 million a year, 80 million a year, 90 million. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to boggle people's minds, but it is going to happen.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
I'm ready for Tyrese $44 million to be cheap.
Let's go. All right, man. We've gone way too long. Tony, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for Write Up. And we'll be back later on this week, hopefully talking about at least some close Pacers games in the TD Garden. So thank everybody for listening. For Right Up Meridian podcast, this is Scott signing off.